back to Clair de Lune from scratch. For measures 35 and 36, we're going to see that they're actually kind of a repeat of some material that we learned earlier, which is good news. It doesn't mean we have to learn these notes all from scratch, so to speak. So let me do this. Let me just cut out measure 35 and 36, and then I'm going to show you their rough equivalent from where we learned them earlier in the piece. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. All right, I'm going to stip out these two measures. Now, they may look unfamiliar at first glance, but I'll show you how similar they actually are in just a moment. Let's go ahead and just clip these two measures out. Now, they're almost identical. So there's some slight differences, but it's really not that bad. What I'm going to do is, and it's going to be a little smaller than normal because I want to do a kind of a side-by-side comparison. So I hope you don't mind. I'm going to pull this down this way. And let's go back to the music. And now I'm going to go back to the previous portion, measures 27 and measures 28. Okay? Like I said, at first glance, it may not look like they're the same thing, but I'll show you their similarity in just a bit. Okay, let's copy that, move that over down here, paste this over here. Okay, so now we kind of have a side-by-side comparison. Let me go ahead and play measure 27 for you first so you can see what we're talking about. Here's measure 27, you recall. Now we're at measure 35. Now take a look at this. I'm going to just go ahead and kind of cut to the chase and tell you, basically, this is the same thing but an octave higher. So instead of down here, now we're up here. So 8 notes higher, 1 octave higher. Okay, so we basically do the same thing here. Some slight differences. Now, so let's take a look at this. The only real major difference, believe it or not, I'll point this out to you real quickly, is over here. Here we have the bottom left hand playing a single note and then traveling up. Here we have 2 notes. So there's an extra note down here. Again, look at this same thing, single note down here, but here we have 2 notes. That's pretty. There's actually one more of these. There's one more single note here. And then another single note. Now these notes over here, let me just show you another quick difference. They look different than these notes. They're spelled differently, but they actually sound the same. And this is what we call enharmonic spelling. It goes a little bit into theory, and basically what it does, it kind of helps us to understand the new key mode that we're entering. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. I guess the best way to explain it, well, in linguistic terms, it's not quite the equivalent in language, because if you spell a word differently, it means different things, although they may sound the same. For example, you can say the word to, and that could either mean the number 2, or going to the store, or having too many. Again, you could spell it differently. They sound the same, but they have slightly different meanings. I guess that's the rough equivalent. So in music, these notes are going to sound the same, but their underlying meaning is going to help us travel to new kind of expressive ideas within the music. I want to invite you, if you haven't been to my website at pianofromscratch.com, I just created really to kind of incorporate all these lesson videos. What I'm going to be introducing are a series of live webinars. And these webinars are going to give us a chance to talk more in depth about some of the more advanced musical and technical aspects of the music. So even for beginners or intermediate or advanced players, if you're wanting to have a little more interaction, it'll be me broadcasting live, but also taking questions live via chat, and if I can figure it out, also by webcam. So I want to invite you to go to pianofromscratch.com and click on the webinar button, and I would invite you to sign up. We're going to have these as a regular feature going forward. So for those of you who are just starting this, you may be viewing this video, way after I've actually created this. Hopefully we'll be continuing these webinars so that you can just jump in and ask your questions and get some extra help that way too. So this is one of those things we could probably cover in the webinar format. So anyway, let's just go ahead and focus on the new portion and just talk about some of the slight differences in this measures 35 to 36, aside for just being a little bit higher. Let's go back. Let me just erase this so we can focus on this a little bit more, okay? And let's just take a look at this really quickly. So here, remember, we have, if you remember our fingering, I'm just going to just reiterate this really quickly. Remember, we're going to take the right hand It's going to come to the rescue over here of the left hand, okay? We actually have it kind of written out this way as opposed to here where most of the notes are in the left hand here. So actually in this version, kindly enough, the right hand, more or less for these two portions over here, this one and this one, it's kind of more written the way I like to play it. Same thing over here. The right hand kind of comes to the rescue for here, plays the right hand over here, okay? So now let's just take a look at, very quickly, we do this. I neglected one more of these double notes over here. Again, we had a single note here. So basically, we have the bottom note, and we just add a third above it. So it's very simple. Okay, it looks tricky, but it's really not that bad. All we're going to do is we're going to play this with a fourth and a fifth finger. And since we have the octave shape, we're already prepared for that. So even though previously in this portion you only played 5-2-1, you're basically doing the same thing, playing 4-5-2-1 with just the extra finger here, right? Same idea is going to apply for this. We had previously here, okay, A flat, F flat, A flat. Now we're in the same area here, but now I'm going to add this note above, which is a C flat, okay? So same thing, 4-5-2-1, and you're going to see after you've played this, this is quite comfortable too. It's really not a big deal, okay? Same thing going on. Thing repeats over here. So again, 4-5-2-1. Now here, let's just take a few moments to talk about the enharmonics over here, okay? Again, I'm going to cut to the chase. It sounds the same as these notes over here. Let's just, I think it's still worthwhile to kind of talk about the different spellings and how we can arrive at the same notes. So here we had a C flat and an A flat underneath that. Here we have, it's kind of rough equivalent higher, but instead of a C flat, we have it written out simply as a B natural. Take a look at that natural symbol over here. And then underneath, instead of a G flat, it's redefined as a G sharp. So C flat, A flat, B natural, G sharp. Same kinds of notes, okay? Just spelled differently. Same equivalent down here, we have a B. We took the time to map this all out, okay? Instead of an A flat down here, we're going to jump up an octave higher, but instead of spelling it as an A flat, it's going to be a G sharp, okay? So in case, actually, now that I realize, I think we've talked about flats, but I'm not sure we really discussed sharps in detail, which are kind of the opposite of flats. So let's go over to that just in detail really quickly. So if I have a note, let me just draw a note over here. Okay? And if I have a flat symbol next to it, okay, that's going to pull the note lower slightly. So if I have an A over here and I add a flat, that's going to actually pull the note lower. So lower means going slightly to the left. That would be an A flat. Now conversely, if I have what's called a sharp, and sharp kind of looks like a tic-tac-toe over here, okay, next to a note, that's going to do the opposite. That's going to pull the note higher or slightly to the right. So if I had a G and I had a sharp next to that, that's going to pull this to the very next note to the right, and that is a G sharp. Do you see how that works? So A flat or G sharp. Okay, those are the rough equivalents. So basically, that's what's happening over here. B natural, G sharp, which is the same as C flat and A flat. Okay? Fingerings are all the same, so I would encourage you to just review the lessons from lesson 27 and 28 if you want to get a handle on this. And obviously the last few notes are a little bit spelled differently, but they're basically playing the same thing. Okay? So we can just jump right in to the next measures, and we're going to be going into new territory with looking at a lot of sharps now instead of flats. Okay, great. So good news, it's kind of a review, not as hard. We're reviewing old material, applying some new concepts to it, and I think you'll find, except for moving a little bit higher and adding a few extra notes in the left hand, it's really not that big a deal. Okay, I'll see you at the next lesson.